on satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7.
Tonight, Future Forward. Government says that the blue-green budget is to enterprise Sri Lanka for the future.
The intention of the budget was actually to go down the liberalized agenda.
Not enough. Vehicle Importers Association says that despite government's efforts towards green transportation, the public will miss out on its true benefits. Let's join hands. President calls for everyone to come together to build a country safe for children. Will there be greener pastures? With a blue-green budget in the rearview mirror, how would this support Sri Lanka's startups?
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that Sri Lanka has in front of it.
A full report coming up. And in international headlines, Trump in Asia. US President Donald Trump says that the United States will not be exploited in trade.
Those days are over.
Good evening to all our viewers across Sri Lanka and around the world. I'm Mahesh Johnny. We begin our First at 9 coverage with an analysis of the blue-green budget presented in Parliament yesterday. Now, the Vehicle Importers Association charged that despite the Budget 2018 proposing a tax concession of 1 million rupees for imported electric vehicle leaf, the local consumers miss out on the benefit. In the meantime, prices of a number of vehicles are to be increased, while the prices of vehicles with an engine capacity of under 1000 cc is due to be reduced.
Presenting his budget yesterday, Finance Minister Mangala Samaraweera said over the years the government's vehicle policy has been neither clean nor green. In this context, the government proposed all vehicles in the country to be powered by non-fossil fuel sources by 2040. To this end, all government vehicles will be converted to hybrid or electric vehicles by year 2025. The taxes on the importation of electric vehicles, including electric three-wheelers, cars and buses, will be reduced, while rationalizing the import taxes on vehicles powered by fossil fuel. The new formula for import taxes will be based on the engine capacity. Import taxes on an electric car will be reduced by at least 1 million rupees, while import tax on high-end fossil-fueled vehicles will be increased by 2.5 million rupees. Accordingly, the price of a Nissan Leaf is expected to come down by 1 million rupees. In the meantime, the Minister of Finance expressed views on the issue during a media briefing in Colombo today.
All I can say is, the most of our policies which have been designed is to ensure that there is no undue advantage given to anyone. In fact, starting from the Inland Revenue Act, we are trying to simplify everything into a formula. And even for the vehicles, that's why we have introduced a new formula. I'm not only talking about the electric vehicles, but for all vehicles.
The government will also impose a special tax on super luxury vehicles with an engine capacity exceeding 2500 cc. Accordingly, the prices of Toyota Prado is expected to rise by approximately 5.1 to 5.5 million rupees, while Toyota Land Cruisers may see a hike of approximately 22.9 million rupees in price. At the same time, the import taxes on a diesel three-wheeler will go up by around 50,000 rupees in order to encourage the transition into environmentally friendly electric three-wheelers. According to the Ceylon Vehicle Importers Association, prices of Toyota Axio, Toyota Aqua, Honda Vezel and Honda Grace will see an increase of around 750,000 rupees. Moreover, the prices of Nissan X-Trail, Mitsubishi Outlander and Toyota Prius will increase by around 1 million rupees, while Toyota Premio is expected to go up by around 118,000 rupees, with Toyota Allion expected to rise by around 170,000 rupees. Meanwhile, the price of a Toyota Vitz with an engine capacity of 990 cc is expected to come down by over 1 million rupees. The Ceylon Vehicle Importers Association said the prices of small Indian vehicles are expected to come down by approximately 150,000 rupees.
This budget actually below 100 kV electric vehicles, they are giving some concessions, but they are categorized brand new and used. Used cars, they have a normal tax, earlier tax only, but the reduced tax only, they are giving the brand new ones. Actually, we are also used car importer, we can't import the brand new cars. The only franchise holders can import the brand new cars. Actually, this concession, we can't get it because of these two categories. We are giving the budget proposals for reduce some duty for 1,500 cc, 1,000 to 1,500 cc hybrid cars, but actually they are increase the tax for 2,000 to 2,500. I think it should be reduced, and normal people are mainly using by 1,000 to 1,500 cars.
Piyasin Gamage was sworn in as Galle District parliamentarian today to fill the vacant position created by the removal of former UPFA parliamentarian Geetha Kumar Singha. Meanwhile, the second reading of the budget commenced today.
At a time when we are at the peak of our debt, when you realize that taxing the public directly and indirectly won't solve the debt issue, you still want to tax them even for the transactions in banks. So if the bank has to pay it and they cannot get it from the public, how can they earn an income? This is how you began the nation-building tax. You start small as always. As for the vision of this budget, despite it being the inaugural budget of the minister, it is detrimental. You all think that you have not destroyed this economy but has uplifted it. That is why the whole country had to wait for an oil tanker to come by. You should be ashamed as a government. You have also imposed another tax for sugar. The reason you gave was because sugar leads to diabetes.
Look at the recent study by the University of Colombo. 49% of the public drink moonshine. Out of the people who use liquor, 84% use arak. But in developed countries, over 84% drinks beer and only a very small amount drinks hard liquor. So as a country, we should decide, are we to follow countries like Saudi Arabia, where they ban liquor and people who take them will lose their hands or limbs? If not, I don't see a problem with someone wanting to drink a small beer. Actually, drinking a beer is much better than drinking a sugary drink.
Minister, they do use sugar for beer. Check and see. A liquor company uses over 300 sacks of sugar. So what are you trying to tell the public? It's okay to drink beer which has sugar, but we will tax sugary drinks because it causes illness.
alcohol volume එක අනුව ලෝකෙ හැමරටම කරන විදියට බද්දක් පැනවීම.
ඔබතුමාලා මේ ප්‍රචලිත කරන්න හදන ප්‍රවණතාවය අපට තේරෙනවා. ඒක ඉතින් ජනතාව තේරුම් ගත්තද?
We understand as to what you're saying. Let the public decide on that. You cannot have a blue-green budget with a bunch of thieves. So do you think that the same people who caused the bond scam loves this economy? In the quest towards an enterprise Sri Lanka, in the end, will be an enterprise Sri Lanka Private Limited. We object to this budget.
More on the budget. The blue-green budget is expected to focus on utilizing the economic potential of ocean-related activities in formulating the overall strategy, combining it with an environmentally sustainable development strategy. Speaking at an event held in Colombo today, State Minister of Finance Eran Wickramaratne said that the budget will consist of policy changes that will be future-forward.
With the forward-thinking budget in the rear-view mirror, the government says the changes to the fiscal policy of the good governance government is to make Sri Lanka in par with developed nations.
The intention of the budget was actually to go down the liberalized agenda. We are a middle-income country at the lower end of the middle-income spectrum. And how do we actually get to the higher end of the middle income spectrum? For long, we have been categorized as a South Asian country and will always be geographically and culturally. But economically, I think we are in the basically wrong categorization. I think Sri Lankans' ambitions are much higher, much bigger. So to liberalize the economy further, some of the things that were holding us back are our own frameworks and our legal frameworks.
First at 9, caught up with Chief Economist of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Shiran Fernando, on the impact of the blue-green budget on the business sector.
So what we've been seeing with Budget 2018 is a signal in particular to the private sector and businesses that budget's willing to work on what's been talked about before. And that's important because you want that policy consistency going forward as well for businesses to know what are the key strategies. And the key thing, I think, is in particular on the fiscal direction, especially where the budget deficit revenue targets are going. There seems to be a good move in that direction, and that path should continue, in particular given that we're under an IMF program. So all that really matters in terms of keeping the economy stable.
The 2018 budget, which is also focused on youth development and education, has allocated 325 billion rupees for student insurance and tabs, as well as an additional 3,500 million rupees to increase the number of students in medical and engineering universities.
So what really matters is the quality of the spending, whether it is, to put up a building in terms of education, higher education, or whether it is things like, laboratories, things like that, or the curriculum. Or even the digital strategy. So I think in this budget there has been specific initiatives, particularly even on the digital front, to get this allocation spent wisely.
In a bid to protect the environment, the government also proposed to introduce a carbon tax where the applicable rates for a motorcycle, car and passenger bus will be around 17 cents, 1.78 rupees and 2.74 rupees per day respectively. But what is the newly introduced carbon tax?
I think it will need to be done with careful consideration with the stakeholders and the industries involved. But there will need to be over time reduction in some of these para-tariffs, especially if we are committing ourselves towards this FTA strategy.
Fernando also touched on the removal of 1,800 para-tariffs.
So I think the rationale behind it, from what I understand, is to sort of get a consolidation in terms of cell towers, get some of the players to consolidate, and also to, I think, reduce the visual pollution, as it were, with some of these towers that are there. So that's the rationale behind it. So initially, yes, I think it really depends on whether it's borne by the digital providers. It's too early to say whether it will be done by that. But over time, I think if there is a consolidation, then this revenue proposal would not actually be too much of a big impact.
The government has also decided to impose a cellular tower levy of 200,000 rupees per tower per month to discourage the proliferation of such towers.
This year they've sort of, even with the excise duty changes, they've identified it as the capacity, based on the capacity. It is one way to raise revenue and also maybe to move towards this eco strategy as well. But again, this proposal should not, if they do want to collect revenue from this, they should move towards implementing it and let it not just hang in there for another year and be repeated again.
Meanwhile, the blue-green budget has allocated 200 billion rupees towards the Ministry of Health in order to tackle the rising threat of non-communicable diseases, especially among children, and has proposed an excise duty of 50 cents per gram of sugar contained in beverages with effect from midnight yesterday to combat diabetes and obesity.
In other local stories we have for you tonight, President Maithripala Sirisena highlights the importance of everyone coming together to build a country safe for children. Addressing an event held in Polonnaruwa today, the head of state said issues with child safety should not prevail in a developed society.
The Polonnaruwa District Summit of the national program Let's Protect Our Children was worked off today at Royal College, Polonnaruwa under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena.
The safety of children is a major problem in our society. This problem cannot be a characteristic of a developed society. It is the responsibility of all parents as well as the entire society to protect children. We're implementing this program with a 3-year national plan, and we have allocated 5.24 billion rupees for this.
Meanwhile, yesterday, the annual prize giving of Methodist High School in Moratuwa was held under the patronage of the President. Addressing the event, the President discussed combating drug abuse in the country while also touching on balancing global powers with national interests.
When I visited Australia, I requested the Australian Prime Minister to provide necessary technology as well as technical training for our officials to eradicate drug abuse. When the Australian Prime Minister visited Sri Lanka, he affirmed that Australia will provide technical equipment for investigation, detection and research on drugs as well as special training for our officials. As an island, the ocean surrounding us is both an advantage and a disadvantage. We are a hub for tourism, fisheries, global shipping and trade. Our location is important to world powers in matters of international security. That is why some powerful countries have their eye on us. Under the guise of friendship, some have ulterior motives. We must learn how to manage them so that we can carry on without causing trouble.
The Secretary to the Ministry of Petroleum Resources Development, Upali Marasinha, says the fuel supply will be back to normal by tomorrow. When First at 9 inquired, the Secretary said another consignment of fuel is scheduled to arrive on the 17th as well.
Fuel tanker Neveska Lady arrived at the Muthurajula terminal on the night of the 8th and fuel was pumped to the terminal following tests. Accordingly, the first bowser carrying petrol left Muthurajula terminal at around 7:30 last night.
With this, we hope the supply of fuel will be back to normal and all the inconveniences faced by the public will be over.
In the meantime, the Secretary to the Ministry of Petroleum Resources Development, Upali Marasinha, said 3,000 metric tons of petrol was distributed by 6 this morning.
Let's now take a look at some other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
A 22-year-old youth was stabbed to death in Hakmana Matara last night due to an argument between two groups. The youth was pronounced dead upon admission to the Matara hospital. In Ambalangoda, meanwhile, a body of a woman was discovered in a rented house. The deceased is a 22-year-old and is a mother of one. The cause for the death is yet to be ascertained. A 12-year-old schoolboy from Mahahila in Beliatta died after he fell into an unguarded pit at a construction site of the Southern Expressway. A 35-year-old was arrested by the Vaunia police yesterday for the possession of 2.2 kilograms of heroin. He was arrested when travelling in a bus to Jaffna following a tip-off received by the police. Navagattegama police arrested two persons with a 300-gram blue sapphire in their possession, believed to be stolen from a treasure located in Navagattegama Reserve. After producing them before the Anamadu Magistrates Court, the acting magistrate ordered the gem to be handed over to the National Gem and Jewellery Authority. Two Malaysians were taken into custody at the Katunayake Bandaranaike International Airport by the airport customs, with $100,000 being in their possession.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back everyone, on to business news now. One key area in which the government is placing a high focus in the 2018 budget is creating the next generation of local entrepreneurs, where startups play an important role in the digital era. The blue-green budget predicts that IT-related sectors have the potential to rake in $5 billion in export earnings in the next 5 years. Now, with this in mind, the government has pledged to support 150 youth-centric startups in the field of technology and invest a further 3 billion rupees in the next 5 years under the IT Initiative Program funded by the Export Development Board. But what is the ecosystem of Sri Lanka's startup industry, and is Sri Lanka prepared to meet the global demand? First at 9's Katharina Chang reports.
Startup entrepreneur Shonil Veeravansa is among the 75% of youth who are part of the emerging startup industry. His vision to bring about social change on online platforms as well as innovative applications to make work-life easier in the digital space was a passion that led him to enter the world of startup.
I was in this field for almost 10 years now. Even when I was in school, always wanted to build something on my own.
However, Shonil points out that one of the main challenges faced in the sector is the limited access to funding.
If you're starting your own project, a pet project, it has to be sustained, and you need to find a way so that you can fund that project. That's the biggest challenge in startup world, globally as well as locally. That's the most biggest challenge. But most of the universities and other private entities are starting that venture capitalist funding different programs in Sri Lanka. But that again, it's very limited to a niche segment of founders.
Having seen the value of startups, serial entrepreneur and startup founder Michael Munasinghe introduced the concept of co-working spaces in Sri Lanka to encourage innovation and creativity for young entrepreneurs in spaces such as this.
Sri Lanka's got a lot of great entrepreneurs, a lot of good ideas. I think even Sri Lankans don't realise how talented some of the people are here when compared to lots of other parts of the world. But what was missing was the infrastructure, the place for people to come and work. So I felt something needed to be done.
Michael Munasinghe says that the government should seize the opportunity of developing a conducive environment for startups before it is too late.
I have a view that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that Sri Lanka has in front of it, and that it's almost like there's a gap in the clouds and a ray of sunshine is shining down on Sri Lanka. Most major economies in the developing world are slowing or in recession. Sri Lanka is not in recession, and we have this opportunity sitting in the traffic lights with a green light in front of us to hit the gas and go quickly.
So what is the current ecosystem of Sri Lanka's startup industry like, and what can be expected?
After a slow start, startups has come to a state where things are moving quite fast at this moment. The message has gone to universities, the students, and the enterprises and the corporates. So everybody sees that there's an opportunity in startups. And at the same time, certain venture capitalists has come into the ecosystem. So they have enough funding if they find interesting ideas. Now, Sri Lanka is a small market. For you to sustain as a startup, if you're offering like high-tech services, Sri Lanka is a small market in that sense. So they have to kind of cater the local market to start with, because that's what that's what they could reach at the beginning. But eventually, if they want to be really successful, they need to go beyond the borders.
Now, speaking to experts regarding startups, it's very evident that although startups are emerging as a culture in Sri Lanka, it does have a long way to go. Speaking at an event recently, Deputy Minister of National Policies and Economic Affairs, Dr. Harshadi Silva, spoke on the government's plan to encourage startups.
And also you recognize the startup culture needs a lot of support, innovation. You will see, the support that we are giving for creating entrepreneurs, running boot camps, to funding, space for accelerators. All those things are coming. Open and trade, add value, put more money in knowledge, and the government will do its politics to ensure that we position ourselves at the center of the Indian Ocean.
Let's take you to the stock market now. Sri Lankan stocks were lower after the close today as losses in the telecoms, healthcare and footwear and textile sectors led shares lower. At the close in Colombo, the CSE All Share lost 0.22% to hit a new one-month low. We now have the daily market update with Imeshi Fernando from the Colombo Stock Exchange.
The benchmark all-share price index lost 14.48 points to close at 6,552.59, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 index lost 7.13 points to close at 3,841.97. The turnover was 1.35 billion rupees with 48.3 million shares changed in hands. Today's foreign purchases were 295.07 million rupees and foreign sales were 233.3 million rupees.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
On to international news now. US President Donald Trump says the United States can no longer tolerate chronic trade abuses and will insist on fair and equal trade policies. He made the remark addressing the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, which commenced in Vietnam today. Now, Trump arrived in Vietnam today from China on the fourth leg of a 12-day tour of Asia.
The Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, held this year in Da Nang, Vietnam, brings together 21 economies from both sides of the Pacific. Addressing the summit, US President Donald Trump outlined the future US role in the region with regards to trade and growth.
I will make bilateral trade agreements with any Indo-Pacific nation that wants to be our partner and that will abide by the principles of fair and reciprocal trade. What we will no longer do is enter into large agreements that tie our hands, surrender our sovereignty, and make meaningful enforcement practically impossible. The United States will no longer turn a blind eye to violations, cheating, or economic aggression. Those days are over.
Meanwhile, the White House notified that the much-expected formal meeting between Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the summit will not be held due to conflicting schedules.
Now, there is still no respite from toxic smog and dangerously high levels of air pollution for North Indian cities, including New Delhi. Visibility is poor as pollution levels reach 30 times World Health Organization recommended limits in some areas. Residents complain of headaches, coughing and eye irritation. Illegal crop burning in the farmstead surrounding New Delhi, vehicle exhaust and swirling construction dust have caused the crisis, which arise every year. Well, let's now take a look at some other stories making news across the world.
British Prime Minister Theresa May warns that she will not tolerate any attempt to block Brexit after setting out the specific hour the UK will leave the EU. Amending the EU withdrawal bill, the British government set the time of exit to 11 p.m. GMT on the 29th of March 2019. Saudi Arabia's Attorney General Sheikh Saud Al Mujib says at least $100 billion has been misused through systemic corruption and embezzlement in recent decades. He added that 201 people were being held for questioning as part of a sweeping anti-corruption drive that began last Saturday. The UN Human Rights Committee warns that Australia needs to stop rejecting refugees and change its migration laws to come into line with international standards.
They cannot treat asylum seekers as criminals and detain them, and they cannot absolve themselves of their duty not to send them back to danger.
You are watching Sri Lanka's trusted news brand, Other Derana 24/7.
On to sports now. The elections of the National Olympic Committee of Sri Lanka is set for the 9th of January next year. And the decision was made at the General Assembly held at the Olympic House yesterday.
The NOCSL elections, which were scheduled in 2013, were postponed due to objections over several sports regulations introduced in 2013. The meeting marks the first NOCSL General Assembly held since 2009. At the Assembly, it was decided to limit the official terms of its President and the Secretary to 2 terms.
Our new constitution was approved. New additions and changes were made based on a vote. We decided to hold the election on the 9th of January. More cricket. The Sri Lanka Under-19 cricket team found it easy going against the United Arab Emirates in the Under-19 Asia Cup as they romped to a 7-wicket win. This is the first match of the group phase and both countries are placed in Group B in the tournament worked off in Malaysia. Thisaru Rashmika and Jehan Daniels bowling helped Sri Lanka restrict UAE to just 66 runs in just 22 overs. Thisaru Rashmika was the pick of the bowlers with figures of 4 for 17 in 8 overs. Chasing a victory target of 67, a partnership between skipper Kamindu Mendis and Nipul Ransika steered Sri Lanka's Under-19 to an easy 7-wicket win. Well, tennis star Venus Williams yesterday gave a deposition related to the fatal car crash that killed the 78-year-old man in June. Williams is now facing litigation for a wrongful death case filed by the family of the deceased.
Linda Barson, the wife of departed Jerome Barson, was driving the car at the time it hit Williams' car at an intersection. Jerome Barson was taken to a local hospital and died more than a week later from an organ failure. Barson's daughter filed a case against Williams alleging wrongful death action. The family is seeking damages in excess of $15,000, claiming that William is at fault for being in the middle of an intersection on a red light. The Palm Beach Garden Police Department, however, had previously released police surveillance video footage following an investigation, which they said that Williams entered the intersection lawfully.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Well, Sadhini Upeka is at the Other Derana Weather Centre with your forecast for the next 24 hours.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. This is your forecast first for the next 24 hours. Tomorrow's temperatures will average at around 27 degrees Celsius in coastal areas, hitting a high of 30 degrees in the south. Cooler temperatures in the low 20s will prevail in the central hills. Now a low pressure zone will form across most parts of the island during the course of the day, spelling widespread showers or thunder showers, especially in the north and east. That's it from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your city by city forecast.
So it's Friday, and before we wrap things up for the week, let's share a good story with you. Tonight's story comes from the US state of Florida. Now 13-year-old Sam Ruskin was recently suffering when he noticed a fishing boat that had capsized some distance away. He knew he had to help and did not hesitate.
It's kind of scary because if you go too far past the jetty, you can get sucked in.
Ruskin could see a man thrown from the capsized boat, struggling against the current with no life vest to protect him.
I paddled out to where he was and I gave him my surfboard and paddled next to him back to shore. He definitely could have drowned if he lost his breath or didn't make it back in the shore.
And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Other Derana 24/7. First at 9 will return tomorrow at the same time. Be sure to join us then. I'm Mahesh Johnny. Thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the weekend. Good night.